Welcome to this week's episode of the American Serial Killer Guidebook with your intrepid hosts, Elton and Cherish Morgan.
Welcome to episode 5 of the American Serial Killer Guidebook. I'm your host, Elton Morgan.
I'm your co-host, Cherish Morgan, and we're the Morgans.
We will be covering the life, crimes, and execution of Aileen Carol Wuornos, one of America's most infamous female serial killers who walked Florida highways as a prostitute, killing anyone unlucky enough to stop to purchase her wares. She went from being a homeless hooker to the wife of a millionaire yacht club commodore, living the good life, to homeless hooker again, all within 90 days. Stop by our website, tasg.net, or find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook to find out what we're up to. Remember to check back each week for new episodes and get an earful of violence, brutality, carnage, and most of all, justice. It's time to find out what led Aileen Wuornos down the path to homelessness, prostitution, robbery, murder, and eventually execution. Wuornos has been branded the damsel of death, the highway hooker, a few different names, but most people remember her from the movie about her called Monster, starring Charlize Theron. So a lot of people, when you say, who is that? It's Monster. Oh, yeah, I saw that movie. So, but, she was convicted of killing 6 men between 89 and 90, hitchhiking around Florida, but she actually confessed to a 7th. And after her arrest in 1991, she gained notoriety incorrectly, might I add, as America's first female serial killer, because a lot of people don't realize that female serial killers have been around for a long time. All right, the very first documented female serial killer was named Jane Toppin, aka the Angel of Death, and she had a confirmed kill count of 13. All right. She confessed to 31, but was suspected of killing well over 100 victims before being caught. And that was in 1901. But alas, that is a story for another show. All right. Aileen Carol Pittman. That is her birth name. All right. She was later adopted by her grandfather and grandmother, whose last name is Wuornos. But she was born on the 29th of February in 1956. But 4 years later in 1960, her mother, Diane Wuornos, abandoned them, her and her little brother, Keith. And on the 18th of March of that same year, 1960, they were legally adopted by their grandparents, Lori and Britta Wuornos, in Troy, Michigan. And they legally changed Aileen and Keith's last names from Pittman to Wuornos. Okay, Aileen never met her dad. His name was Leo Pittman, but he ended up committing suicide by hanging in prison, where he was serving time for kidnapping and sodomizing a child. So, I don't wish death on anyone, but that was probably the best thing that could have happened to him.
Yeah, definitely.
You're kidnapping and sodomizing children. A, you really don't need to be around your own kids. And B, there's not really much use for you in society.
No, there's not.
You make better fertilizer than you do a citizen.
Right.
So, unfortunately, Aileen said that she was, her grandfather was abusive, alcoholic, and she admitted later on that she had a brief sexual relationship with her brother. Okay, that tells you the type of family stock that she came from. And at age 11, she began having sex with neighborhood boys in exchange for cigarettes and spare change. And this earned her the nickname Cigarette Pig, which a name like that in and of itself is enough to destroy a lot of kids. Just simple nicknames and bullying can hurt people. But having been sexually abused and even the whole thing with her brother and then being used sexually at such a young age, even for things as simple as cigarettes and just change. I mean, that is so dehumanizing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you start to feel like you're less than nothing.
Right.
You're garbage. I mean, you're simply an object to be toyed with for a fucking cigarette or a pocket full of change, 50 cents, whatever people had back then. Mm. When you start feeling like you are worth less than a cigarette or change, then that is going to have some severe psychological trauma. I mean, it is going to damage you for the rest of your fucking life. Okay. According to court documents, Aileen only had an IQ of 81, which is in the low, dull, normal range, which I thought 81 was, you know, maybe mentally handicapped, but apparently that is the dull normal. That's the low end of normal.
Below average, yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of scary that it's that low. Around the time she was 13, she says that she was raped by her grandfather and a family friend. All right. She became pregnant by her grandfather's quote unquote friend. And she was forced to give the baby. Well, she had a baby boy and they sent her to a home for unwed mothers. And as soon as she had the baby, her grandfather threatened to kill her if she did not give it up for adoption. But told her she could definitely not come home. If I was her, I wouldn't want to go home. All right. And there are more detailed sexual accounts of the sexual abuse that she faced at the hands of her family and, you know, boys in her hometown. But we're not going to get into that because I read some of this stuff and it is just disgusting. I would rather not repeat it, you know, and I'm pretty sure that nobody really wants to hear that because it's just fucking awful. I mean, this shit was awful. Okay, So we're just going to leave it at the fact that she was sexually abused and raped by her grandfather and one of his buddies who she got pregnant. They sent her to the home for unwed mothers and they forced her to give the baby up for adoption. Okay. Awful, terrible, nightmare life. You know, if ever there was a nightmare life, that is it. And when she was in high school, she started experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and which is no surprise. No surprise. People have coping mechanisms, and whenever you've been damaged to that degree, I don't blame her one bit. I mean, I'd seek alcohol and drugs just to numb the pain too, right?
Yeah, I would too.
And as she started sleeping in the woods at the end of her street and abandoning cars just to escape her home life. Just to get away, just so she wouldn't have to be raped, just so she wouldn't have to be physically abused, just so she wouldn't have to face the daily pain of being alive.
It's really sad.
That these people put on her. She would rather sleep in the woods with bugs and snakes. And I mean, I don't know what was there back in those days. It could have been coyotes or wolves or anything, you know, or in abandoned cars. But when you're living in a household that is so abusive, you would rather face the mean streets and risk getting killed by homeless people or animals rather than be at home. That's bad.
Or the men that you pick up.
Well, at this time she was just in high school. So she wasn't really prostituting herself. Well, she may have been. I don't know for sure. But she eventually dropped out of school in 10th grade, and at that same time, her grandmother died from a liver disorder, and which was probably cirrhosis from the heavy drinking and drug using. And that's when her grandfather kicked her out of the house. So that tells me that it was probably her grandma was the one actually allowing her to live there. Yeah. As soon as grandma was gone, grandpa said, "Get the fuck out. I've got what I wanted from you. You remind me what a piece of shit I am every day just by looking at you. You know, I don't want you here." Yeah. So he kicked her the fuck out. And she decided to start hitchhiking around the country. And I guess she figured since, you know, she knew that she had something that men wanted or that males wanted. So she decided to use that to, earn a living while she was out hitchhiking. It's an easy way. You're not tied down to any one spot. You can go anywhere and find a trick, I don't know what she was making, 20, 50, $100, whatever. And, she was doing that, but she was also trying waitressing, hustling pool. She was a maid at a motel, and she was doing other odd service jobs. So that kind of tells me that, hooking wasn't her first choice. She was willing to work to try to support herself. And when that didn't work out, she would resort to sex work. Mm-hmm. So, in May of 1974, she was arrested in Colorado for DUI and disorderly conduct. Apparently, she was firing a .22 pistol from a moving vehicle, and she was later charged with failure to appear when she skipped town before trial. I'm not really sure what happened with that. There's not a lot of records indicating, whether she was finally caught and what they did to her. But in 1976, she ended up in Daytona Beach, Florida. And that same year, her grandfather committed suicide. So I'm not sure how she took that. Maybe she was happy he did it. Maybe, I don't know. But regardless of what family does to you, a lot of times they're all you have. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. There's really no way to determine how she felt about that. But on July 14th of 76, she was arrested again for assault when she threw a cue ball at a bartender's head.
Ow.
Yeah, and unfortunately, 3 days later, her brother died of cancer, and she was in jail when that happened. When
she
he
just
passed
had
away.
A horrible life.
Oh my God. Yeah, and a few weeks later, she got arrested again for DUI, but this was around the time the check came in from her brother's life insurance policy, and luckily her brother had named her as beneficiary. So the check came in, she got arrested again for DUI. She was able to bond herself out of that. She was able to use the life insurance money to pay off all her fines from her previous arrests. And once she got everything paid up and got herself legal, she bought herself a new car. So she's feeling good. She's driving around. She owns the vehicle. It's not stolen. It's not, somebody else's, not borrowed. And she promptly wrecks it. Once again, leaving her homeless and on foot. Because at least she was able to sleep in it, and she owned it. It didn't last long. That hard partying, hard drinking, hard drugging life, it takes its toll, not just on you, but on your possessions and the people around you.
Yeah.
She was desperate for stability. Okay. And while she was in, DeLand, Florida, she ended up meeting and marrying a wealthy retiree. And he was also the president of the yacht club, which is what they call a Commodore. It was 69-year-old Louis Gratz Fell. Okay, but their marriage did not last long. And when I say not long, I mean literally weeks. Okay, Aileen can't go from being abused, treated like garbage by everyone, I mean like less than human, to all of a sudden being around sophisticated, wealthy, high society, educated people, right? She has a huge chip on her shoulder. So anytime anybody looks at her, says anything, she automatically gets offended. She sees it as an affront to her character, that she, they're considering, oh, look at that white trash. Look at that hooker. Look at that fucking worthless woman. Can you believe
feels like she don't deserve it?
Right. Like she doesn't deserve to be there. Like she just imagines all the stuff that people are saying about her.
Right.
So she gets defensive and she starts a lot of fights. Okay. And well, she ended up assaulting her husband, Louis, and a few other people. And he ended up filing a restraining order against her. And he claimed that she beat the shit out of him with his own cane.
Damn.
Yeah. So after only 9 weeks together, Louis Fell had the marriage annulled. Okay. So she went from being homeless to wealthy to homeless again real fast. Something based on her prior luck. This is something only Aileen could do.
Right.
All right. Aileen continued to make her money through sex work and occasional small crimes up to 1981. And then she's arrested for robbing an Edgewater, Florida convenience store for $35 and a couple packs of smokes. All right. She was sentenced to prison on May 4th of 82 and did a year. She got out on June 30th of 83. But then less than a year later, on May 1st of 84, she was arrested for attempting to pass forged checks at a bank in Key West. Okay, she managed to stay out of trouble after that, and then a little over a year. On November 30th of 85, she was named as a suspect in the theft of a revolver and ammunition in Pasco County, Florida. All right. We're guessing that's where she got the gun that she started carrying around with her as she moved around place to place. And okay, in the beginning of 1986, in January, she was arrested in Miami and she was charged with car theft, resisting arrest, obstruction of justice, because she provided false identification bearing her aunt's name. All right, the Miami officers found a .38 caliber revolver and a box of ammo in the stolen car. All right, and then on June 2nd of 86, Volusia County sheriff's deputies detained her for questioning after a male companion accused her of pulling a gun in his car and demanding $200. All right, she was found to be carrying some spare ammo, and police also discovered a .22 pistol under the passenger seat that she had occupied. This tells me that this is where the beginning of the violence began. All right, before that, she was, shoplifting, robbing convenience stores, things like that, small time stuff. All right. But she had to have been in a bad spot to pull out a pistol on a guy who knew her, someone who could identify her, knowing she was going to get caught, and demanding $200.
Well, she wasn't very smart, so.
No, she wasn't, but she was smart enough to know that, hey, if I pull think of someone you know at work or someone that you know socially. If you pull a gun on them and force them to give you money and then leave, that they know who you are. That they're going to know to tell the police who robbed them. She knew this. So that tells me that she was desperate. She thought, I need the money. I can get this money, but by the time the police come looking for me, I can be gone. Okay. But
possible.
So I'm guessing that maybe she didn't think ahead. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it, kind of deal. And then a short time later, she met 24-year-old hotel maid Tyria Moore. All right. A lot of you will remember her from the movie. In the movie Monster, she met her at a gay bar. All right. And then they were a little standoffish. She was standoffish and stuff, but that's the movie. We're not going to get into that. All right. She calls Tyria Moore, or called her soulmate and the love of her life. All right. She met her at a lesbian bar in Daytona Beach, and the name of the lesbian bar was called the Zodiac. All right. In real life, they hit it off right away, and they moved in together very fast. They were living in various motel rooms across the state, and Wuornos took care of her financially, and most of the money that she made to take care of Tyria was through sex work and some part-time jobs here and there when she was, promising her she'd go straight. I'm going to go straight. I'm going to go straight. I'm going to stop doing this. And then all of a sudden, you got 2 weeks between paychecks or longer, and then there's no money in that period. Well, it's quicker just to go turn a trick. Mm. It always draws them back. And so on the 4th of July of 1987, the Daytona Beach police detained Wuornos and Moore, at a bar for questioning regarding an incident in which they were accused of assault and battery with a beer bottle. All right. I tried to find the police records, everything. It doesn't go into any more. I could not find any more detail than that. I don't know who they assaulted, I don't know if they assaulted one another. I don't know if they tried to rob a guy. I don't know what happened. All I know is they were questioned for assault and battery with a beer bottle. All right. That's pretty much stays quiet. I'm not sure what happened over the next 2 years. There's not a lot of information available of what happened between mid 87 to the end of 89. But on December 1st of 1989, Aileen Wuornos got drunk, and that's when she allegedly confesses to Tyria Moore that she shot and killed a man early that morning. Okay, according to court documents anyway. All right, that day, a deputy discovers an abandoned vehicle that belonged to Richard Mallory. Okay, he was an electronic shop owner. He was 52 years old. And then on the 13th of December of 1989, his body was found under a piece of carpet several miles away, hidden in a wooden area, and they found that he was shot 4 times. All right, so Richard Mallory, victim number 1. Officially. All right. On the 1st of June, 7 months later, of 1990, officers discovered the body of 43-year-old construction worker David Spears. Okay, he was found nude, and he'd been he'd been shot 6 times in the torso with a .22 caliber pistol and left in the woods in Citrus County, and they found his truck close by. Let me tell you something. A .22 caliber bullet is not going to kill you. Most people, being shot in the torso. Mm-hmm. Every time you get shot with a .22 caliber bullet, it's going to hurt like hell. And it's going to take multiple .22 caliber rounds to kill you. In his case, 6.
Damn.
That's like torture. Get shot, he's still alive, but he's in agony. He gets shot a second time. He's still alive. He's in agony. He gets shot and again. He's still alive. He's in agony. She's probably like, fuck, what's it going to take to kill this guy? Well, you know what? You're in essence shooting somebody with a bullet that's like 3 or 4 millimeters in width and thickness. And is a grown man, so I cannot imagine the agony this guy had to go through to take 6 rounds before he finally died.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like getting stabbed in the torso with an ice pick. You know how many stabs it's going to take you to kill you with a little thin ice pick?
Yeah.
Oof. All right. 5 days later, on the 6th of June, same year, 1990, the body of Charles Carskadden was found. He's a 40-year-old truck driver, part-time rodeo bull rider, and he was found in the woods in Pasco County, Florida. All right, that's the same county where she was a suspect of stealing that revolver and that ammunition. Okay. He was last seen alive on the 31st of May, so a week earlier. And he had left home on a trip to Tampa, and he was driving his Cadillac. He'd been shot 9 times in the stomach and chest, and his car was found a little while later, next day on June 7th, in a different location. 9 times in the stomach and chest. So that tells me that she shot him repeatedly in the stomach first, then decided to move on to the chest.
That had to have hurt.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's the same. It doesn't say what caliber weapon he was shot with, but I'm assuming it was that .22 caliber.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. And she must have just gotten off on causing agony, because there's no reason to shoot somebody that many times. I mean, if you're going to, he could have shot him in the head with it. It might have taken 2 or 3 rounds, but it's not 9, to the chest and torso, to the stomach.
I don't mean to laugh, but damn.
Yeah, that's just mean. Mm. That's just fucking mean. And then on the 4th of July of 1990, the abandoned vehicle belonging to Peter Seams of Orange Springs was found. All right. He was a 65-year-old retired merchant seaman. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. I have no idea what that is. I'm assuming it's something like a merchant marine, which I also don't know what that is. But he was headed to Arkansas. Okay. Moore and Wuornos were seen abandoning the car together. All right. And Wuornos' palm print was found on the interior door handle, and his blood was found on the seats, but his body was never located. All right. And if this is correct, then it disproves Tyria Moore's account of not knowing about or participating in any of the criminal activity after Richard Mallory. Okay. Allegedly, this is all based on, court documents and personal accounts given by witnesses. But Aileen was convicted, but I cannot testify to the veracity of the information itself because I was not there. Okay, let's get that out of the way. And on the 4th of August of 1990, this is a busy year for Aileen anyway, Troy Burris, who was a 50-year-old sausage truck driver, was found dead by a group of people who were in the woods having a picnic near a lake in Marion County. All right, the body was badly decomposed, but investigators were able to determine that he had been shot twice. His truck was found a few miles away. Okay, so either they upped the caliber of weapon that they got, or they realized that, hey, 2 to the head is not as agonizing as 9 to the torso. So, a short while later, on the 12th of September of 1990, 2 young boys were out riding their bikes, and they came across the body of Charles Richard Humphreys. And he was fully clothed. He was a 56-year-old retired Air Force major. He was a police chief. He was a Florida child abuse investigator. All right. He had been shot 6 times in the head and torso, and investigators found his car abandoned near a Suwannee County gas station. 6 times in the head and torso. So I'm guessing that maybe he tried to run at him, so she had to take him down with the torso shots and then to finish things with the head shots. At least that's how I'm gathering it went down. Okay. On the 19th of November, short 2 months later, same year, 1990, Walter Geno Antonio was found dead near a remote logging road in Dixie County, up in the hills. He was a 62-year-old truck driver and a member of the reserve police, and he was found nearly nude, and he had been shot 4 times in the back and head. And police found his car 5 days later in Brevard County. All right, he was found nearly nude, which means that they had given him the time, or she had given him the time to take off his clothes, which means she was probably standing behind him. He was getting naked, thinking he was going to have sex. And before he could finish, she started shooting him, shot him in the back to take him down. And then I'm guessing headshots to finish him off. All right. Police got their first break in the case when a witness reported seeing 2 women walk away from the first victim, Peter Seam's car, after they had crashed it. All right. And then they got some composite sketches of the women, and they were printed in various Florida papers distributed across the country. All right. Together, Wuornos and Tyria Moore, and this is documented, this is in police and court records, they sold some of the stolen items that they had taken at Florida pawn shops. And during the murder investigation, Volusia County Police discovered some items that belonged to Richard Mallory at a local pawn shop. And apparently in Florida, whenever you pawn something, not only do you have to sign for it and stuff, but you have to put your thumbprint down, verifying it was you, and that thumbprint matched Aileen Wuornos. All right. Then the police traced some other stolen items from Mallory to Wuornos. A camera that was in Mallory's car was found inside a warehouse unit that Aileen had rented under an alias, which was opened with a key taken from Wuornos. Once they got her, she gave him the key, told him where it was, the name it was under, and they found Mallory's camera in there. And then they traced some other items from Mallory's car to people or pawn shops that Wuornos had been in contact with. When Tyria Moore sees the media reports that police are looking for 2 women in connection with a series of murders. All right. She confronted Aileen about it, and she panicked, said, "Oh my God, they're looking for both of us. They think I helped you in this deal. I'm leaving." And she packed up and she returned home to her hometown in Pennsylvania. All right. This is all in court documents. All right. So various tips came in from the public, and detectives were able to identify them as Aileen Wuornos and Tyria Moore. So detectives tracked Aileen to the Fairview Motel in Port Orange, Florida, and they put her under surveillance. Okay, on the 9th of January of 1991, they arrested Wuornos at the Last Resort Bar in Florida on an outstanding warrant from 1986 for weapons possession. All right, I'm guessing it's one of all those long line of arrests that she, jumped bail on or bond or whatever. All right, she's held on that charge until she can be charged in connection with the murder of Richard Mallory, who was her first victim. All right, Tyria Moore was picked up in Ohio by the police, and she cooperated with them to trick Aileen into confessing to the murders. And in a court hearing, Tyria Moore described how police put her up in a Daytona Beach motel room for 4 days. All right. And they kept her supplied with Budweiser and hamburgers, and they got her, they ended up tape recording 10 telephone conversations between Tyria Moore and Aileen Wuornos. All right. And Moore admitted from the witness stand that she had lied, cried, and practically pleaded with Wuornos to get her to recount her crimes. Okay. And she did. Aileen did. In one conversation, Aileen says that she pumped 7 slugs into the former police chief, Charles R. Humphreys, the 56-year-old former police chief, just to put him out of his misery. He was in that misery because she was pumping him full of .22 caliber round shells or rounds. Okay, on the 16th of January in 1991, Wuornos confessed to killing the 7 men. She told police, "I just wish I never would have done what I did. I still have to say to myself, I still say that it was in self-defense." All right. She claimed self-defense on, I don't know how many interviews, for years she claimed self-defense. And after 12 years on death row, she changed her tune in an effort to clear her soul of the lies she had told. Okay. But I think she had a lot more to worry about when facing judgment than a few lies. All right. She finally decided to come clean. So a lot of you out there think, well, maybe she did do it in self-defense, right? Maybe she did do it in self-defense. Well, you tell me if she did it in self-defense.
That you killed those men in cold blood.
Yeah, and I got to come clean that I killed those 7 men in first-degree murder and robbery. As they said, they had it right. A serial killer. Not so much like thrill kill. I was into the robbing biz. Serial killers are in this thrill killing jazz. I was into the robbing, and eliminate a witness. But still, then again, I got a number, so it's serial killer. But I'm coming clean before I go in that execution chamber and be executed.
All right. So tell me now, you heard it in her own words. She did it because they had something that she needed. All right. There's not really much else to say. Okay. They had something that she needed, and she needed to get rid of a witness. Plain and simple. It wasn't for thrill. She was in the quote unquote robbing biz. All right. Aileen also gave directions for a dive team to recover her weapon. All right. The .22 caliber pistol. All right. Then she was charged in connection with the murder of Richard Mallory. Aileen pleaded not guilty, claimed she acted in self-defense, and that Mallory had violently raped her. All right. And though Wuornos' first trial is only for the murder of her first victim, Richard Mallory, a judge ruled to allow the evidence from the other 6 murders. All right. This is when Tyria Moore testified on behalf of the prosecution. Okay. Some people are still convinced that Tyria Moore was Eileen's accomplice during or after the fact, but no evidence exists to support the allegations, although Aileen did say something to that effect. All right. We are in no way saying that Tyria Moore did or did not have anything to do with it. We're just saying that, we're just reiterating what was said. And like I said, Aileen said something to that effect. And here it is.
Sometimes
did she know what you were doing?
Oh, yeah. Ty always knew everything I was doing.
So you were very close?
Yeah,
Okay, we're not saying anything one way or another. We're just putting the information out there for each of you to make up your own mind. All right, on the 27th of January in 1992, the jury found Wuornos guilty of first-degree murder. And when the verdict was announced, Aileen was upset. She was pissed. And, we all know how volatile she was, how quick to temper she was. And she shouted, "I was raped. I hope you get raped, scumbags of America." Now, we know that she was not raped by Richard Mallory. We know it was not self-defense, but she said this anyway, like she said, trying to beat the system. All right, on the 31st of January, same year, 92, she was sentenced to death. Aileen later admitted that there was no self-defense in the murder of Richard Mallory, which we all just heard from her mouth. Okay. On the 15th of May in 92, Judge Thomas Sawaya rendered 3 more death sentences. All right, she turned to the assistant state attorney, Rick Ridgway, and she hissed at the guy. "I hope your wife and children get raped in the ass." All right, she made an obscene gesture and muttered, "Motherfucker." Wow. Fucking A, right? I mean, this woman she's become so embittered, so angry from everything that was done to her. I believe it or not, and I'm not trying to justify anything that she did, but I can see things from her side. And I'm saying this from her point of view, I was, as a child, beaten, raped repeatedly.
Abandoned,
thrown out like garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And I kill a few people who were looking to, pay for sex, and now all of a sudden I am going to be sentenced to death. My life was taken from me at a young age. Through all of the trauma I experienced, I do a few things, I'm sure she didn't think about it that way. Like, oh, I took these people's lives. She saw it as just taking out the trash herself. And then now they're taking her life.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a bad deal all around for everyone involved.
It really is.
Okay. And in June of 92, she pled guilty to the murder of Charles Carskadden, and she received her 5th death sentence. And then in February of 93, she pled guilty to the murder of Walter Antonio and was again sentenced to death. And though it was believed she was responsible for the death of Peter Seams, his body was never located, and Wuornos was not charged in his death. While in prison from 93 to 2001, all right, her defense team worked to overturn her death sentences, but again and again, they were denied. And in 2001, Aileen finally had enough. She fired her defense team. She dropped all her appeals, and she literally asked them to put her to death. She's like, "I can't live this way anymore." She found God when she was on death row, as many do.
That's great.
And she decided that the best punishment, that she was going to clear her soul, cleanse her soul by, confessing to the fact that there was no self-defense, that it was cold-blooded murder, as we just heard, by confessing. Confessing cleanses the soul, so she's going to do that, and then she's going to go meet her maker and pay the ultimate price, and she hopes that she's going to be right with God after that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? On the 9th of October in 2002, Aileen Wuornos was executed by lethal injection almost a decade after her final conviction. All right. At the time, she was only the 10th woman to be executed in the United States since 1976. She declined a last meal, and instead she just asked for a cup of coffee. All right. And once they got her into the chamber and they asked her, what do you have anything to say? Her last words, and this is kind of bizarre. Her last words are, "I'd just like to say that I'm sailing with the rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus June 6th. Like the movie, big mothership and all, I'll be back." Okay. But nobody understood what that meant, But let's go ahead and end this episode with the words of Aileen Wuornos herself. And make sure to listen to the closing to find out who we're covering next. Okay. These are Eileen's words. This is her final goodbye to all of us.
This is the last time I'm going to say it. You have to kill Aileen Wuornos because she'll kill again.
You heard it directly from the horse's mouth, folks. See you next week.
Thanks for joining us this week on the American Serial Killer Guidebook. Be sure to subscribe. Visit us at taskg.net. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And join us next week for another exciting episode filled with murder,